Let's go. Why don't we go next to Yoel or Yoel from Ontario, Canada, our friendly neighbors to the north. What's going on? Is it Yoel?
Yes, it's Joel. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Great. My question is, do you think it's possible to be an ethical consumer in today's globalized society?
Yeah, I've gotten you. It wasn't you who called with this exact same question like a month ago, right?
No, no.
It was. Okay, yeah. So, okay. Here's the thing. Let's assume the answer is no. You can't be an ethical consumer in this society. Then what do we do? What do we do based on that? If that were the answer, just indulge me for a moment. Let's say I said, Yoel, you can't be an ethical consumer right now. Nope. What would you do?
Are you asking me personally?
Yeah.
I guess you have to just kind of do the best you can. That's why I'm asking you really is because, like, for example, the World Cup was on recently,
Yep.
and initially I was going to boycott it out of obviously the human rights violations of
Yeah.
migrant workers dying and whatnot. But
Of
then I
course.
realized my hypocrisy was, for example, if I go to England or Germany or whatever, those World Cups and those leagues still take sponsors from Nike and Adidas and other
Yep.
companies that still exploit workers in China and in Bangladesh and whatnot, right? So it almost seems like no matter what I do, I'm just being a hypocrite, you know. I'm just
Yeah.
picking and choosing what I think is personally important to me.
I know exactly what you're saying. This is the difficulty, and we need to find the balance between living completely off the grid and isolating yourself from all of these things, which almost none of us are willing to do. I mean, almost literally no one is willing to do that, or doing the best we can to both make decisions we feel okay. We don't have to feel great, but we feel like we can accept the decisions we're making. And
Because
where we think things are not right, doing what we can as activists to affect change. So at the end of the day, I mean, you make a good point. I covered for a decade leading up to the Qatar World Cup. There was corruption in how Qatar got the World Cup, horrible treatment of what are essentially slaves, building the stadiums, deaths and cover up of the deaths, promises made by the Qataris about kosher food and LGBT people and all these things that they went back, all this different stuff. And I covered it all along. And then we get to the games. At this point, the cake is baked. And I want to see Argentina. I was born in Argentina. I want to see if Argentina wins, and Argentina won, and it was a great thing. Um, where's the balance? Do I feel okay enough with the fact that after a decade of talking about how horrible it was, I watched a couple games? I do. I'm okay with it in the grand scheme of my life, and everybody has to kind of decide for themselves.
yeah, I kind of feel like in a sense it's almost too much for an individual to take the burden of trying to boycott every little thing. I kind of think it relies more so on us turning to international organizations to kind of um, place better restrictions on where, for example, like a lot of cobalt comes from slave mines in the Congo. I think
Yes.
it's too much of a burden for me to boycott all rechargeable batteries because that's just not a good life to live.
Right.
I think it relies more so on the UN and international bodies to sort of act in our favor, try and orchestrate some way where it's reasonable for me to be an ethical consumer. It's not on me to just sort of boycott every little thing because that would just make my life miserable,
I
right?
agree with that. I also think that as activists and voters, we need to demand of those organizations that they actually do the things you're talking about.
Of
So
course.
there's really an element of all these things. But I think you're thinking about this roughly the way I am.
Great. Yeah, just because I've just it made me feel bad kind of initially watching the World Cup, but then I just realized that like it's just too much of a burden for one person to put on their shoulders to try and boycott every little thing that's wrong about the world, right? Especially in
Yep.
such a globalized economy.
And that doesn't mean we give up, and it doesn't mean we don't care. Yeah, I appreciate the call, Yoel. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there's Yoel from Ontario. Great to hear from him. Very, very exciting stuff.